All right, now it's time to take action on this whole Facebook ads section and how to make Facebook ads work for you and for your customers to gain a larger email list, to educate your customers, the list goes on. So with this strategy, you're going to be thinking, well, that doesn't work for my product. And in fact, it might not, but I want you to think bigger, because when I first heard about this strategy, I didn't think it could apply to an e-commerce store that I was consulting for, but it worked perfect. And it worked a little different. So I'm going to lay out it for you, lay out this process, and then I'm going to show you ways that you can alter or change it up to make it work better for you. So the first step in this process, I've got my blue one for Facebook, is to set up a newsfeed ad that directs people to a landing page for a webinar. And let me back up real quick. A webinar. Why are we doing a webinar? Well, a webinar is going to put you on the camera just like this. You're going to be talking to your customers. And once again, we'll go back to how this can work for a guy that sells hammers versus who sells a course or a beauty product. But the goal here is to set up a webinar to sell a product or a service, or even just to add a ton of value. It might not even sell anything. But your goal is to build a Facebook ad, picture and text. This is actually a news feed ad, so this will actually go in the news feed, so it'll be a little wider than this. So if you're thinking of Facebook and how it is, there's the long feed. The ad will actually be more in the middle versus I drew one that looks more like on the side. But the goal is to build out an ad and send it to an opt-in page. This opt-in page is getting people to sign up for a webinar. So the second step, so one is create the ad, two is get them to opt into the page so they get an automated email. So step two is them right here getting this, and then they get an automated email. So that's email. Step one, create an ad. Step two, send them to an opt-in page for the webinar. You can use lead pages, you can use ClickFunnels, you can use Optimized Press. You might have your own through MailChimp or Emma or whatever email service that you use. We can go into more detail on that, but getting them to opt in on some level to your webinar coming out. So that's number two on the list. Number three, is to have visitors watch the webinar. And so through your email confirmation, getting them to sign up for it, now you want them to actually watch the webinar. And the webinar, let's make it bigger because it's going to be more of what we're doing here. 80% of the webinar, so all of this, 80% of the webinar is going to be free information. And make this information really good. And if you're coming from an internet marketing side right now and watching this video, then you understand this process a lot more than someone that's just running an e-commerce store, because this process is a lot more familiar in the internet marketing space and the information marketing space. And I want to encourage you though to apply this to your e-commerce store, because once again, I did this and it worked for an industry that you would never believe. And so here, let's keep going with this, then I'll come back to how this could work for your business. So you want them to watch 80% of the information that you're giving them for free. The final 20% is left for you to sell. So you have 20% left in the webinar right here. This is all about selling. All right, I'm going to keep going because right now it's going to confuse people if you're selling a hammer, what you're going to sell. Are you selling them a hammer? Are you doing a webinar on a hammer? So I want to make sure we clear that up. The fourth part, and this works a lot for internet marketers and for information marketing people, is to have an upsell once they get to the shopping cart. So the fourth, immediately after a visitor purchases this product, so whatever you're selling here, you're going to do an upsell. So boom, upsell them to this product. And it's a cheaper or a more inexpensive related product to what they just purchased. It's incredible how well this piece converts. So let me make a note. This is upsell. All right, let's back it up. I'm going to get rid of the Facebook feed. This is your ad. Create an ad, send them to an opt-in page. You're gathering their email address. So there's a win right there. You get their email address, boing, boing. Then you're getting them to come and watch your webinar. After the webinar, you're going to sell them that 20%. In that 20% time, what you're selling them is up to you. Then you upsell them to another product along the way. You might have a lot of questions right now. If you're in the internet marketing or informational marketing space and you follow Jeff Walker, or Ryan Deiss, or any of those guys, then you know that this formula works. What if you're selling a hammer online? Back to that example. Let's say I sell a bunch of hammers and hard hats and heavy equipment gear. How's this going to work for me? Well, same concept comes back to the very beginning. You want to get targeted customers on your email list so that you can market your product to them. Your product, whether it's 10,000 products or one product, is going to come in right here. You might just sell information and not have an actual, you might stop right here. If you're selling hammers online, you might say, I don't want to actually try to sell them a hammer or a specific tool online. That's totally fine. But what if you did? And what if it wasn't a hammer? What if it was more information on what hammers can do for them? I know this is going to be a ridiculous example, but we're going to go with it. All right, so let's dive into this a little bit more. You own an e-commerce store that sells a ton of hammers. How are you going to sell them on a webinar? Well, what if your webinar included information about the most effective way to hammer so that you don't ever have to spend hours using your hammer all day long? The one thing I do with my wrist that no one else does when they use a hammer that has increased my productivity of my whole team by 20 or 30%. Let's say you actually have that tip to share. Well, during this webinar, you can share with them, because you sell hammers, that this is knowledge that they need to know. I want to know how to, come down, use my wrist, use my arm, whatever that process is to make hammering more efficient. You're selling them on your knowledge. It might not even be a product. Or the final 20%, it could be, and you know what? This is the #1 hammer that we sell. If you use this technique plus this hammer, you're going to be the best hammer person out there ever. All right, well, and I'm going to give you a discount for this hammer because you watched this webinar. I added value to you. You already collected their email address, so you've already won. Then you sell them a hammer, and because you've just shared with them the entire process of how if you do this certain thing, then blah, 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 this hammer is going to help you get even more down. This hammer is going to help you be even more efficient. Your upsell might not have to happen for you. However, it could be a box of nails. It could be another complementary product to the hammer. It could be a toolkit, that you put the hammer in. You just bought a $19 hammer. Get this toolkit for $4 and I'll include it in the package so you don't have to pay double shipping. You can get creative with this. So if you're doing a digital product like the product you're watching right now, I could go through this process fairly simple. I'm going to try to sell you a digital product right here, like this course, let's say, and then I'm going to upsell you on maybe a piece of content that I've created for this course that you also would really appreciate having, but I'm adding some value to it. So maybe it's a PDF download for $4, and you really want that PDF download. Whatever the product might be, understand you don't have to include a physical product to sell or even a digital product to sell. You can stop here and say, wow, I just added value to my customers because I gave them a free webinar on how to blank. You could teach them how to use that entire technique to hammer better and never pitch an actual hammer at the end. But with this done, you can get the most out of your Facebook ad. I know we've spent a lot of time focusing on the entire funnel of gathering email addresses and selling a product, but ultimately this all comes back to creating successful Facebook campaigns to get them there in the first place. Why do you set up an ad on Google or on Bing or anywhere else? It's to get people to your store. So why not get them to come for your information, gather their email address so you have them in the future to sell to, and then perhaps even sell to them on that first time, the first attempt you have. So this is the entire funnel of what we would suggest you doing, because we've seen huge results in both the product and the digital marketing space for this. So give it a try, and we'll see you in the next module.